Hey guys, Comet here. Welcome to episode 5 in my Overly Scienced series. Now, in the last episode, I promised that I would get into oxygen production, so that is what I'm going to do in this episode. I need to dig out a little bit of this down here. The top of the oxygen production facility will be right about here, and that is in line with these ladders here. So I put 4 tiles in between every floor, like that. This will be the top. I will leave a link and a card up in the top right to where I first learned about this oxygen production facility. It can supply all 18 dupes here with plenty of oxygen. Then I will just mirror this over here on this side once I put in another DHU, once I get enough dupes, of course. So I'll skip this ahead a little bit until when this is finished, and then I'll go through and explain how it works, how to set it up, and I also want to get into a little bit of stoichiometry because there's some interesting things I want to explain about an electrolyzer. So this is the real-world application of the electrolyzer now. In the game, when you put in 1,000 grams of water, you end up with 112 grams of hydrogen and 888 grams of oxygen. So we want to see if these numbers check out, and hint, they do, but I want to show why. So if we look at a periodic table of elements here, we see that oxygen has a molar mass of 16 and hydrogen has a molar mass of 1. So I'm going to write those numbers down over here. So hydrogen has a molar mass of 1 and oxygen has a molar mass of 16. We're going to need those. The chemical reaction that's happening when you put water into an electrolyzer is water is being turned into hydrogen gas and oxygen gas. Now this is imbalanced. We have 2 oxygens on the right and only 1 on the left. That can be remedied by putting a coefficient of 2. And then we will also need to then have a coefficient of 2 in front of the hydrogen. So there's a total of 4 hydrogen atoms on the left and a total of 4 hydrogen atoms on the right. There's a total of 2 oxygen atoms on the left and a total of 2 oxygen atoms on the right. So this is balanced. We're going to be using this equation. Now we need to break it up into its 2 parts. So we have 2 H2O turning into 2 hydrogen. We can drop out those 2's here, and we'll be left with H2O turns into H2. And then the second part of it is 2 H2O turns into 1 O2. Now the first thing we need to do is figure out how many moles of input we have. So we're going to take our grams of H2O, and we're going to multiply that by the molar mass of H2O, which is 18. And you can find that by just adding up the molar masses of the individual parts of H2O. We have 2 H's, so that's 2, and then 1 oxygen, so that's 16. You add those 2 together, you get 18. And then that is in 1 mole of H2O. And that gives us 55 well, when you round, it's 55.6. Sorry, not grams, moles of H2O. Now we're going to use this number to figure out how many grams of H2 we're going to get and how many grams of O2 we're going to get. So we first set up the equation for, well, take your pick. We'll do hydrogen first. 55.6 moles of H2O. We're going to multiply that by the ratio of this coefficient and this coefficient, which are both 1. They're just not written in. So we have 1 mole of H2 to 1 mole of H2O. That is going to give us, well, we can do it all in one step. We then want to get rid of the moles of H2 as the unit and end up with grams of H2. We can use the molar mass of H2 to figure out how many grams of H2 we're going to get, and the molar mass of H2 is just 2 grams of H2. So moles of H2O, moles of H2O, moles of H2, moles of H2, that all reduces out. And we're left with 55.6 times 2. And this is a G. That's a really bad G. So that is 112.2 grams of H2. And lo and behold, that is exactly, well, almost exactly what we end up getting in the game. They just don't include this 2 here. There's some rounding. So we can see if the oxygen checks out. It does, but I'll show you. We're going to use the same number to start with, so 55.6 moles of H2O. We're going to use a similar method here. So we're going to use this coefficient and this coefficient. So moles of H2O we want on the bottom so that it can reduce with the top. We have 2 moles of H2O this time with 1 mole of O2. Now we're going to do the same thing we did here. We're going to then multiply by the molar mass of oxygen to reduce out the moles of O2, and that is 16. Sorry, not 16, 32. Right, it's 16 times 2 because of the subscript. Now we will reduce units here. These go away, these go away, these go away. We're left with grams of O2. So let's get a calculator. We have 55.6 times 32, and then divided by this 2 right here, we end up with 889.6. So 889.6 grams of O2. And that is exactly what the game gives us as well, pretty much. The game gives us, like I said here, 888 grams of O2 and 112 grams of H2. So it uses real-world numbers to come to these numbers here. So the devs knew what they were doing when they used these numbers. Alright, so my dupes have just now finished this. I had to throw in some more metal refining because I realized I didn't have enough copper. Let me go to the overlays here. So this is the ventilation overlay. There are 2 gas pumps connected to 1 pipe. You can't run the pipes across each other for the same reasons that I explained about liquid pipes over here a couple episodes ago. The automation overlay looks like this. These 3 are connected to this Atmos sensor, and these 3 are connected to this Atmos sensor, and then this pump up here is connected to its own Atmos sensor all by itself. Now this Atmos sensor you're going to want to set to be above 250, so it will turn this pump on when the gas pressure up here gets above 250, and then these down here you're going to set them both to above 450. So the way this works, if you haven't already checked the video I linked yet, the electrolyzer will give off hydrogen and oxygen. The hydrogen will float up to the top, the oxygen will sink down to the bottom, and then this gap right in here acts as a gas lock between the hydrogen and oxygen once it gets up and running. To set it up, go back to the gas overlay, I have this pump going across this line here via a bridge, and I just have it coming out of this gas vent. But once I get just hydrogen up in the top here, then I will destroy this gas vent and connect this pipe up. And then it goes over into a reservoir. The reservoir will turn these hydrogen generators on when it is above 95. So if we have too much hydrogen accumulated, then we're going to burn it off. And if the smart battery here is too low, then we're also going to burn some hydrogen. So this unit by itself is self-powered. once you get it going. So what I'm going to do for now is destroy this here, and then I'm going to connect these up to these coal generators. Oh, the other thing I should go over is the plumbing overlay. So I have the water coming in via insulated pipe, then it changes to a radiant liquid pipe to suck up some of the heat from the outgoing gases. So the incoming water will cool off the system if you set it up like this. And everything in here is made out of gold amalgam. That way it will never overheat, because you can't pump in liquid water that is above the overheat temperature of gold amalgam. You would be pumping in steam at that point, and it would break the pipe and not come in. So there's no way to overheat it if you make it out of gold amalgam. And the electrolyzers will always produce gas at 70°C, regardless of the input temperature of the water. If the water comes in hotter than 70°C, then the electrolyzer will make the gases at whatever temperature the input water was, above however many degrees above 70. So if you send in water at 40 degrees, you get out gas at 70 degrees. But the incoming water will go through these radiant pipes and suck up some of that heat and cool the gas back down to the input temperature of the water. If you put in water at, say, 85 degrees, then the gas leaving will be 85 degrees because that's the input temperature of the water. It's probably a really bad explanation, but just key takeaways: use radiant liquid pipe like this and make everything out of gold amalgam, and you shouldn't have any problems. Okay, now I'm going to hook this up over here. And it looks like I might need some more copper, actually. Okay, let me make a little bit more copper. Okay, the extra copper has been accumulated. They're still working on this over here, but you can kind of see this working. So these pipes here, they also need to be vented. I just realized. So I'm going to put in... Why can't I build there? Oh, the generator's in the way. Right. I'm going to put in some gas vents here. That way I can vent all of this gross gas out of here. You want to end up with just oxygen and hydrogen in here, and then you'll see how they kind of separate. Let me increase the priority on that. Okay, so all of the gases are starting to vent out. While I'm setting this up... Okay, so here comes the water. It should start to push all of these extra gases out. I'll go to the gas overlay here. So the oxygen's coming in, there's the hydrogen. The gas pumps are working. If I go to the ventilation overlay, you can see it's a lot of oxygen being made. And we're starting to run out of power because this hydrogen is not being put into the generators, it's just being vented off instead. But that's kind of what we have to do at the beginning here, getting it set up. Once these two tiles in here become hydrogen instead of oxygen, it will create a lock, and you won't have any oxygen getting into this top gas pump. That's overpressurizing. This might take a little bit longer than I was expecting. So this, I'm actually going to increase it for now. That way it forces some hydrogen to accumulate. I've let some hydrogen build up, and now I've set this back to 250. And I'm going to see if that will get it to work. Oh, this is still backed up. Okay, it's kind of going. It's a pain to get it to start up, but once it starts, you never really have to touch it. And then I've also routed some of the oxygen through here into the base, and I've gotten rid of the diffusers here and here. It's just about there. I gotta get rid of this last bit of oxygen. I need this to not overpressurize. The oxygen pressure is falling. It's almost there. And it just broke. Damn it. Okay. I swear this works. I'm just going to connect this. It's gonna start breaking these, but if I just disable auto repair, then it's fine. When you have a building taking damage, it's better to just disable the auto repair and then deconstruct and reconstruct the building. Otherwise you lose resources repairing. If you just deconstruct a damaged building, you get the full mass back. Okay, I'm gonna try and let the hydrogen build up again. I've maxed this out so that the gas pump stops working. I'm gonna see if I can get enough build up and then turn it on and get it to snap. But the problem is that I'm starting to suck up hydrogen down here, and that is going into the base, and I don't really want that. Set this back to 250. The problem, I think, is that these pumps aren't working because these are backed up. So what I need to do is get the Atmosuit docks connected up. Then I think it'll start to work. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Alright, perfect. Okay, this is exactly what you want. Now that there is a hydrogen seal here, it just sucked out all of the oxygen, and you're left with just hydrogen up here. So it's a natural filter, and it doesn't cost any power. So now, you should only be getting hydrogen in this pipe over here. Looks like all of the oxygen is out of this. Okay, perfect. So now I can deconstruct these buildings, and then replace them. And then this will be completely self-sufficient. Now that it is running on its own hydrogen, what I'm going to do is disconnect that. So this is on its own separate grid, and it will keep powering itself as long as it is supplied with water. So we'll only run into problems if this tank runs dry. Now that we have access to pretty much unlimited oxygen, that will give us Atmosuits, which we can then use to send our dupes anywhere in the world, which is how you really transition into the later stages of the game. So I'm going to set up the piping here, and I want to also go over why I do it the way I do it. So I have two bridges like this, and then I have my lines here. I do something like this. By setting it up this way, where I have two lines of oxygen coming in, and then having a bridge down, two bridges down into the Atmosuit dock, it allows me to fill up two Atmosuit docks at a time and not worry about which one is connected to which pipe. So all of these Atmosuit docks are connected to both pipes, and so both pipes can fill any two Atmosuit docks at the same time. What this allows is just faster throughput on the Atmosuit dock exchange. When duplicants come in, I can have two drop off an Atmosuit at a time and get filled up at a time. And so this is why I also have the extra Atmosuit dock. Even though I'm going to have 18 dupes in here, I like to have 19 Atmosuit docks. And that is because I can always be filling two at a time. And so by having an extra one, I always have surplus suits ready for more dupes, which just improves efficiency ever so slightly. And in the background, I've also been doing all of the researches. So I've gotten all of the basic ones. Now I'm going into the ones that require interstellar research. You can get started on these, so this one and this one. You just can't progress past them until you've gotten into space. I'm going to start this one, and then when that finishes, I'm going to do this one. And then the yellow progress bar will be what we need to fill out once we get into space. Okay, this is bad. I just noticed someone made a mess right here, so I'm going to immediately sweep that up, or mop that up, because if you end up with, okay, well, there goes that idea. If you end up with polluted water in this pipe, it's going to break your electrolyzers here, and then you're going to end up with polluted water on the floor, and the polluted water will off-gas into polluted oxygen, which will then get picked up by the gas pump, and it will be sent through this pipe, and it will break your Atmosuit docks. And I know I'm kind of stressing all my dupes out with this build, and things are going terribly wrong. I'll come back when all of them stop freaking out. Okay, they just finished this gas pipe here, so the oxygen is starting to flow now. It's going to go up this way, over this way, and then it's going to start to fill up these Atmosuit docks, and I'm going to force them to do this checkpoint. That way they stop getting scalded up here in this room. They can only leave the base in an Atmosuit, and that will prevent them from getting stressed out from this liquid lock over here. I also have to go in and change their skills once this gets built. Okay, I'll go into skills, and I'm going to give every single one of them Exosuit Training. This is important because they run slower inside of exosuits, and you want your dupes to be as efficient as possible, and running slowly is not very efficient. Now, every time they leave, they'll be forced to use an Atmosuit. Since I have so many that are recovering here, I'm going to change the priority on all of this to force them to finish it now. And I can do that because these guys won't be able to leave the base because there's not enough Atmosuits. So they'll still stay here and recover. Except for when they deliver stuff on the right side of this checkpoint. Which is okay. I just don't want them leaving the base and getting scalded up here. This is what was causing all of my problems up here. This water is really hot. Okay, I wanted to show this working in case my earlier explanation was insufficient. You see how both of these are being filled at the same time, and both of these are running continuously? That is what this whole bridge setup here is supposed to accomplish. And the reason it's important to fill up any two at the same time, rather than having one pipe fill up the first half and the second pipe fill up the second half, is because they always drop off their suit closest to the checkpoint. And so you would end up with only one pipe being used at a time, because there would be no suits over here to suck up any oxygen. So this way, it doesn't matter where they put the suits back. It'll always fill up two at the same time. Okay, getting to Atmosuits is the first major hurdle you need to get over, and that pretty much marks your transition into the mid-game. So I would consider us officially into the mid-game now. We've got oxygen production, metal refining, Atmosuits, water, food, and pretty much all of the research done. Okay, so this, I'm going to switch to this one now, because those two are finished. I just need interstellar research, which I can't do yet. So I'm going to get started on the solid cargo, and then once we get into space, we can finish off the rest. Next episode, what I think I want to do is... Now, I know there are some volcanoes on the map, so I want to dig out a lot of the map and try and find those so that I don't have to rely on my metal refinery in order to get those refined metals. And volcanoes give you a little bit of extra power too. And then the other thing I need to do is start centralizing the power onto this one main spine in the middle. That's really all I have time for in this episode. I hope you learned something. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.